Well, it's time now to take a look through the papers with Diptyka Laurent. Diptyka, you want to start with some articles about another weekend of protest in the German city of Chemnitz this weekend.
That's right, this time led by a march led by the far-right Alternative for Germany party that took place this weekend in Chemnitz. Now, the unrest, of course, stems to last week when two foreigners were arrested for the murder of a German national. But since then, it's really brought into question the strength of Germany's refugee policy, fear-mongering from the extremists, and the rise of the far right and their role in all of this. In cities like Hamburg, as you see on the front page of the Hamburger Morgenpost, there were demonstrations against the far right. And this banner here that on the front page asks, what more can we do in the fight against the far right? Der Tagesspiegel, that's another German daily, they're also asking questions on their front page. Who are we? Who is the German? What is the German national identity today? The rise of the far right, the struggle with the migrant crisis has left many Germans wondering, where do they stand in all of this? The paper says Germany is doing well on, at least according to the statistics, unemployment is down, spending is up. So why are more and more people turning to the far right? That's a big question. Why did nearly 13% of electors vote the far right party into German parliament last year? This divide in German society, at least for this paper, is, quote, gut-wrenching.
And indeed, a lot of people are extremely concerned at how far right their far right party is.
That's right, and this is a big question for the Alternative for Germany party, that AfD party, because they're in the German parliament now. Der Spiegel says many people adhere to their party out of protest rather than real conviction. But we've seen Nazi chants during these protests, and that's definitely shocked a lot of people. And this is a dilemma for the party now, which has a problem distinguishing itself from the extremists and really standing out as a legitimate far-right party. Der Spiegel explains that no, not everyone in the party wants a return of the Third Reich, but they do allow neo-Nazis to move freely through their party. Therefore, it means that the party inevitably supports Nazis, whether they like it or not. And this is actually highlighted in this cartoon we have for you. This cartoon is here showing that protesters from the AfD party, the anti-Islam Pegida party, the pro-Chemnitz party, they're all protesting. They're saying here, we're not Nazis, and yet their protests are, at least in this cartoon, forming the swastika symbol.
OK, well, let's change tone quite completely and indeed cross to the other side of the world, where a Pacific island has a major summit taking place.
That's right. That's Nauru, the Pacific island, not far from Australia. It kicks off today there. It's the Pacific Islands Forum aims to bring together 18 regional neighbours, including Australia and New Zealand, give a voice to the smaller nations in the area on issues like climate change and overfishing. However, the Spin-Off, which is a Kiwi website, they explain that this year the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Nauru is set to overshadow this summit. We're talking about asylum seekers pushed away from Australia, pushed away from New Zealand, set to languish on Nauru in horrific conditions. According to the Refugee Council of Australia, they've seen cases of repeated suicide attempts by children, sexual abuse, attempted overdoses, and trauma that, according to the report, says is greater than those in war zones, and yet not talked about enough. The situation has sparked a hashtag on Twitter, Kids Off Nauru, and under that hashtag we found a couple of cartoons here. You see this child's magnetic sketchboard shows an illustration of a child behind bars, behind barbed wire fences. There's also another cartoon of a child playing with blocks in a cot, but in reality that cot is a prison where young asylum seekers are being held indefinitely.
OK, well, let's hope that international conference will try and bring some light and change things up a bit on that. Meanwhile, Diptyka, I've just opened the Guardian newspaper there, and I can see they've dedicated their entire third page to the game of chess. The Kremlin ally in battle to be king of chess. Tell me more.
That's right. It's not so glorious. The very elegant game of chess is facing allegations of corruption, lies, and Russian meddling. This is not the US elections. This is actually the presidential elections for the World Chess Federation. Now, there are 3 candidates in the running there. You see them. There's a Greek. His name is Georgios Makropoulos, who's accusing his rival, the Russian Arkady Dvorkovich of using Moscow's influence around the world to mount his campaign. The Russians are accused of sending bribes to cash-strapped federations in exchange for votes. The third candidate is a Brit. His name is Nigel South. He's running on an anti-corruption campaign, but he personally has appeared to rile up a lot of people, so he also is under a cloud of doubt. Many blame infighting and corruption for scaring off lucrative investors to the game. Who would have thought for such a cerebral game there could be so much infighting?
I know, well, there just seems to be corruption everywhere. Well, let's move then from kings of chess to drag queens. You have a picture from New York's Wigstock that's got your attention.
That's right. This is not Woodstock. This is Wigstock, the New York drag festival that took place for the first time in decades. Now, this is a festival of stilettos, sequins, drag queens and cabaret acts. It had its heyday in the 80s and 90s during the AIDS crisis, during the backlash against gay pride. It sort of petered out since then, but organizers said they restaged it this year because they wanted to protest against New York. That's, quote, becoming increasingly corporate and dull. Wigstock is, of course, a joyous celebration of diversity coinciding with another festival, Burning Man, in Nevada this weekend, an event that's often criticized for being white, elitist and pretentious.
Okay, thanks a lot, Deepika Laurent, for that wrap of the international papers. We're going to have to take a quick break.